me Guyana, land of many waters with 6 races living together.
Globespan is a Guyanese dialogue moving towards the realization of one nation in one Guyana. It's a platform that offers an all-inclusive discussion, with the pros, the cons, the ones that is taken aside, and the ones that stand in the middle. Globespan believes agreeing and disagreeing are part of the nation's building. Globespan believes that every Guyanese voice is part of the nation's building. As we span the globe for voices from the diasporas and those living home, we stand on our commitment that we are all Guyanese working towards one nation in one Guyana.
Coffee and Dr. Jagan, Bobby, she gave us our great sons. Rohan Kanhai, Coffee and Dr. Jagan.
As the world turns on its axis bringing changes, we as Guyanese must adopt to those changes for a better Guyana for all. Globespan stands on its axis with its belief that one nation, one Guyana, one destiny must include voices from all corners of Guyana.
Me Guyana, land of many waters with 6 races living together.
Good night, everyone, and welcome to Globespan Television here in New York City. Made available by Mr. Noor Singh and our technical directors, Mr. Devin Bissoon and Mr. Ryan Gobin. Tonight we have as our guest the Honorable Minister of Labor, Mr. Joseph Hamilton. But before we get there, I want to say this. The views here tonight represent only those of the minister and not necessarily those of the management of Globespan Television. And to all our listeners and to our sponsors, we thank you very much for tuning in. And once again, Mr. Minister, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
My first question to you, Mr. Minister, you have been the first Minister of Labor for the past 8 years, because 5 years ago, they were not a Minister of Labor per se. They had a Minister of Labor, but within another portfolio. So how are you coping with the responsibilities of being the Minister of Labor?
Well, the thing is, look, the government, when we were running for government and campaigning, that is one of the commitments we made, that once elected, we will have the Ministry of Labor reestablished. So I was appointed, and then I had to go about reestablishing the ministry. And in that reestablishing of the ministry, we couldn't sit down. I had to also establish structures and give service at the same time, and to expand the ministry, because the country was changing and has changed, and we continue to change. So the services that a Ministry of Labor should be giving, it's not a coastal thing or a region 4. It's services that you have to give across the country. And therefore, that was one of the earliest things we did, is to establish labor offices in the regions. And in some instances, we have more than one labor office based on how the region is. Like Region 6, we have 2 labor offices. Region 5, we have 2. Region 4, of course, Georgetown, and we have an office on the East Coast, one on the East Bank. And so that is what, and importantly, you have to now go and staff these offices. And what I decided, we will not send people that are not people that live in the region. So we had people recommend persons. We brought them out, trained them, and sent them back into the regions to work. And so at the level of Georgetown, their issue, when I became minister, all the staff, they were in what is known as Donkey City, at the back there. And I set out to ensure that by the end of 2020, we have the necessary facilities for them to be removed from that place, because that place is not conducive, in my view, for people to work at the back there next to the Stabrook Market. So that is what we have been doing. We had to establish a structure, and we had to find new people, bring in people, train people in specific areas. If we look at occupation safety and health department in a country that was changing, in a country that a new sector that has come to, that is oil and gas, we had just 9 occupation safety and health officers in the system to supervise OSH through the length and breadth of the country. Now the complement of OSH officers, that has increased to 32, and that's a work in progress. We continue to bring in people and train them and that kind of thing. We have to increase the labor officers and co-op officers and the central recruitment officers, so that we can outfit all the offices across the country. So I would say that we have been able to establish and develop these offices, and they are now serving in the regions with qualified people who are capable and knowledgeable of the work that they must do, that they should do. And that has saved a lot of people a lot of time and effort, not having to come to Georgetown. And so we can engage and deal with matters in the regions. Of course, we have a country that is changing for the better. And so what 5 years ago, the type of occupation safety and health officer that might have sufficed, now it has to be different. And my thoughts are to ensure that we have specialists in different areas at OSH, in agriculture, in construction, mining, oil and gas. So that is what we have set out to do: collaboration with entities, joint technical committees we have with partners. We have the Board of Industrial Training, where we are doing a lot of training program that has been expanded to all the regions across the country. When I became minister, it was just a coastal region for activity, so to speak. So we have moved from average under the Granger government, where they train just 1,300 to 1,500 persons a year. We have trained in 3 years 11,439 persons. So that is happening, and that has allowed for several persons who, in their own testimony, they can now speak to how their lives were changed. They have gone into business. Some of them, the type of jobs that they are now doing that they never thought they could have been doing. I've gone to oil and gas companies, and people who are now supervisors in some areas, in technical areas, they now put up their hands when I visit those places and indicate to me, Minister, my start as a technician was with the Board of Industrial Training. And so we continue to do that. The co-op sector is a lot of pain, but for people, Guyanese, they must know that that's a very rich sector. If it works well, the co-op sector, they have thousands of acres of land in their possession. They have a lot of assets that are, most of them are not productive. So all of that we have to we have to deal with. Labor relations, you know, that has been managed exceptionally over the period. You know, we have been able to, in 3 years, have partners sign some 22 and keep growing collective labor agreements. Some of these people in 5 years refuse to speak to each other, refuse to sit down at the same table to discuss and to negotiate. So all in all, we continue to do the best we can do. And every year we are improving, developing the Ministry of Labor.
Thanks. So you actually expanded the ministry to all the 10 regions across the country.
The only region that we don't have a labor office is Region 8, because one of the issues we've been having there is finding staff that are matured and qualified. We have had several persons who have the necessary qualifications, but they're not matured enough. You know, it will be a difficult thing for us to take a 20-year-old young lady and have her go into the gold mines to, and even a young man to seek to enforce labor laws or seek to enforce occupation safety and health laws. So that is one of the difficulties, but we manage and we supervise from Georgetown. We have officers from Georgetown whose responsibility is to supervise both labor and OSH Region 8 until we can find matured and seasoned persons to work there, because, you know, mining districts are a rough country. It's not easy places to operate. And so for the persons who are immature, who are inexperienced, they might have a very difficult time. So just Region 8 is the only region we don't have a labor office. As I have said, in some regions we have 2 labor offices because of how the region is situated.
Let me turn to the budget. One of our viewers sent me this text to ask you. Said that the budget, it's over $1 trillion, but nothing has been placed in the budget for workers, pay, and so forth. It's all based on, she said, infrastructure, bridges, roads, and so forth. How do you respond to that?
I don't think the person looked at the budget. I don't think that person read the budget. I don't think the person read the budget, because every year I know money is set aside to deal with public servants and salary increases and all of those issues. And, you know, the president has committed that we will pay attention to the issue of salaries for public sector workers. We have already done so in some areas. In the medical area, the teachers, the discipline forces, they have already, this salaries have been increased substantially from what it was in 2019, 2020. Look, this afternoon, you know, coming from one of those meetings, a teacher came and she was having a conversation with me. And I asked her what was her salary in 2019. She said it was 153. And I asked her, what is her salary now? It's $283,000, which includes two allowances. One, because she upgraded herself via a degree, and the other via some other methodology. So this teacher's salary has moved from the time we took office to now, less than 4 years, from 153 to 283, and we can go on and on. And so the other important thing, if a person just looked at salaries to make the case about government giving benefits, they're short-sighted, because a scholarship program that are free of cost that the government is paying, that's a benefit that goes to public sector workers. All the grants and so given to children, many of the people are teachers and public servants whose children are being given the grants. So when you're looking at government and how government function, you cannot just focus on salaries, because there are several non-salary benefits that workers can get and will get. Look, duty-free concessions, that's a substantial benefit for a public sector worker. I'm sure you're aware that what the likely cost could be for a person buying a vehicle that has to pay duties and all the and VAT and whatever is put on vehicle. So people argue this case in a very short-sighted way. The facilities, whether education, whether health facilities that are made available to public sector workers, all of those are benefits.
Okay, I might not get to ask questions at all because I'm loaded with questions from our viewers. Here is a question from one of our viewers to ask you, how have you improved labor relations in Guyana since you took office between the government and the unions?
Well, the thing is, the government has made this point. Look, when you're dealing with labor relations, you want a partner that is dependable, that is honorable, and people will honor their word. So if we look at the current situation, that is the teachers. That is an area that we have deliberately dealt with, the government, as regards remuneration and allowances and all the other things. We have made to them loans, $200 million for a revolving loan for the housing and all of those issues. So the union that represents the teachers put before the ministry some 41 items, demands, requests, whatever you call it. And in 3 years, the government has dealt with some 27, which is 60% of what they put before the table. Mind you, these same demands they put before the former government, and in 5 years, they didn't deal with one of the matters. We have dealt with 60% of the matters, plus outside of that, other benefits have gone to teachers that they did not put on the menu of items that they brought to government. So there's an engagement happening, and the partner decided, listen, we're going to call a strike when you're still engaged. So the government continues to make the point that you have to have a responsible and reliable partner to deal with the matter. You have to be able to, when people give commitment, they follow through on their commitment. So we are doing everything as a government to develop the type of labor relations that will benefit the workers. The point is, look, our concern is for the workers and the citizens of this country. Our concern is not to have us be utilized as a government for people to feather their nests, and I use this to make this point. The menu of things that the union, that is the teachers union, presented, one of them is to make available 13 duty-free concessions for the executive of the union. So those are things that we have to deal with. But as regards the intervention, the government over the period, we have done the best we can do in the circumstances, and we have committed to the workers that work in the government sector that their lives can only get better and will get better. So as I've said earlier, people just look at it from the standpoint of salaries, from the standpoint of demands that are seeking to put the government in positions and in a position that does not benefit the employees and a stable environment, then the government will respond and the government will react. But once, yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm saying once we have partners who come to the table that can honor their word and can work with the government, we will continue to create the conditions for that engagement with the unions that represent government workers.
Based on the Constitution, it says that unions do have the right to represent the workers as long as the workers vote to accept that union to represent them. And the governments are obligated to negotiate any contractual agreement between the union and the government on behalf of the workers. But we noticed in the past government, they have not done that. They have just given workers an increase at the end of the year. This government came in, they have been doing the same thing. Why is it that the government has not called in the public service union and those other unions before issuing any increases?
The thing is, just to say that I know it's not factual to say we have never had engagement since we come into office with the public service union. We have had engagement with the public service union. We want to see the public service union as a partner in the development of the labor relations and the development of facilities for public servants. But there are certain things a partner will not do for that matter. For us, once the union and what they enter into the political fray, then we have a problem. And I'm saying that that is the issue. Once they enter, they have to determine, do you want to be politicians? You want to be the de facto opposition? Or you want to represent the interests of your members? And the problem we have is that the unions, they're more politically inclined and they want to have antagonistic relationship with the government. We want to have relationship with unions that are progressive, that speaks to the development of the country and by extension, developing facilities and other things for the workers themselves. But you would agree with me, Dr. Rose, the union leadership, they see the PPP in a different light. And they want, they prosecute their relationship in an antagonistic way. How you would have us respond to that? If it's a partner, we'll have a love fest. But we can't have a love fest, Dr. Rose, with people who every day they plot to overthrow and to bring down the government.
Since you touch on the political aspect of this strike here, in 2018, the teachers union had a strike against APNU. And one of your leaders did say that the strike, did say they support the strike, that the teachers supposed to get a bigger increase. The government has given themselves a 50% increase, ministers, the teachers supposed to get the same thing. And that leader also said that this is not a political strike. That's in the record book, in the history book. I'm not making this up. So if then in 2018, it was not a political strike, why is it a political strike now?
Supporting a strike, Dr. Rose, verbally is a different thing to being on the picket line chanting. And not chanting about teachers and their issues, chanting beyond teachers and their issues. And so the GTU has allowed politicians to impose themselves on their strike that they see that might be important to them. I can tell you that last Friday, they moved this strike action from education to in front of the ministry. And More than 50% of the people that were there are not teachers. Look at the images. Some of them are professional protesters. I can tell you when they start to assemble in front of my ministry, 80% of the people that came there first were PNC, APNU people, many of them with their green jerseys on. And secondly, most of the people who spoke to the media that day weren't teachers and people who represent the union. They were persons who are executive members of the PNC, persons who are MPs of the PNC. So I visibly, I looked at for 3.5 hours, not teachers, was a political entity utilizing the teachers for their own benefit. And as I'm saying, the chants weren't about the teachers and their benefit. The chants went beyond that. So that is the difference. Did you, Dr. Rose, I go back to 2018, did you see any one of us on the picket line writing derogatory pickets about the then government and so? No, we took a position that, listen, we think that the government should pay. And the fact is, that we said, we delivered on it in government. You would have had a case and people would have had a case if we said that teachers should get more, and we are in government nearly 4 years and we did nothing. But no one can say that we did nothing. If you look at what has happened as regards teachers' salary, the increases over the period. Look, importantly, the teachers in training used to receive a stipend. Today, in training, they receive a salary. So there's a lot of changes that have happened. So the two things are so different, they're not similar. We were never on the picket line chanting against the government. That is beyond the strike. Yes, leaders in the PVP would have said yes, that they should pay, they can pay more. But at the same time, again, if I take you back there, the then Minister of Labor, he said that the teachers were greedy or something to that effect. That is the reason why I don't think they should have gotten more money. We have not said that. We have dealt with the teachers. We have dealt with the medical employees and the discipline forces. And we have committed to dealing with all the public sector workers as regards gradual raise of pay. That's our commitment.
Okay, the union can squabble all it wants about the strike. The government can do whatever gymnastics they're doing with the strike. As an educator, my concern is the children. They're being held at pawns. CXC exam coming up very soon. Common entrance exams coming up very, very soon. If this strike continues, then we might not have the passes that we're having. These kids are being denied a chance to get a proper education. When do you think, is there an end in sight to this old strike?
That is in the hands of the people who call this strike, Dr. Rose. My position from day one and the government position is that when I was written to by the teachers union indicating that they will strike, I said that if they do that, the strike will be an illegal strike, and it is an illegal strike. They wrote me first asking for mediation by the chief labor officer and conciliation, whilst they were still locked in conversations with the employer, that is the Ministry of Education. And then subsequently they wrote asking for arbitration. when the Thursday before the strike, they were meeting with the Ministry of Education. So even whilst they sent out a letter threatening strike action, they were still engaged with the Ministry of Education. And the Thursday before the Monday, they were engaged, and there was a planned meeting to be held the 21st, a follow-up meeting. So the parties are engaged. I started out by making a point that they put before the government, the Ministry of Education's 41 items. 27 of those have already been dealt with, and outside of that, even things that they didn't have on the list, the government, we have done for the benefit of teachers. So the persons who can answer are the persons who walk out of their classrooms. My position is from day one, I have said to teachers that if you abandon your post, your employer is not duty bound to pay you. And that is a position. They were forewarned, they were informed, and their educators, we would want to believe that their first interest would be the children. So we have not created this condition. This condition, this situation was created by the teachers union. And it is for them, the same way how they encourage their members to come out classrooms, they must encourage them to go back into the classroom and return to the negotiating table with their employer, the Ministry of Education. And let me just say this important thing. Look, the action on the labor relations is between an employer and employee's representative. So the relationship between the Ministry of Education and the GTU is similar to a relationship with any labor organization and an employer. People are trying to make it out to be different. It's not different. And for the Ministry of Labor, we are dealing with it based on what the law says how you deal with it. They ask for arbitration. Arbitration cannot be imposed by the Ministry of Labor or the Minister of Labor. Arbitration is where that when all is lost, the two parties, they agree for that. So the GTU can impose arbitration on the Ministry of Education, and they cannot ask the Ministry of Labor to impose arbitration. We have not had a breakdown of talks. How do we get to stage 2 and 3 and 4? And that is the issue. And that is what makes this strike illegal. There isn't a breakdown of talks. The employer is responding.
Honorable Minister, if the government take that action that teachers got to go back to work, can I appeal to you on behalf and in the interest of the children, if you could ask the Ministry of Education that you're willing to have one of your labor relations officers intervene in order to bring the strike to an end on behalf of the children, because they're the ones that are suffering. We can say what we want, but they're the ones that are suffering. Can I appeal to you? Can I ask you to intervene for the sake of the children?
My dearest friend, Dr. Rose, labor relations are governed by labor laws and regulations. It's not governed by Hamilton. I came and met them, and when I leave, they will be there. It's not governed by how Hamilton feel at a specific time and moment, my good friend. And the Chief Labor Officer has advised, he has recommended, he has written to the GTU on my behalf, advising them that the action that they were purporting to take is illegal and they should not take it. So I would say this, I would be grateful, you know, the same way you're pleading with me, that Dr. Rose bring the people who started the strike on Globespan and plead with them. They started the strike. We have not reached any place, Dr. Rose, for the labor, the ministry, the labor department, and the chief labor officer to intervene. That is the point. So asking us to do that, the time has not reached. These two parties are still engaged. So we can intervene.
I can bring any one of them on Globespan and ask them to do that. But my point to you is this: as a minister in the government, can you take this extra step? I know the laws are there, but there are times when the experts will tell you you have to just divert from the laws when things are at stake. Can you just take this extra step and try to talk to your colleagues and President Ali? Said, look, give us a chance. Let me see what our chief labor officer can bring both parties to the table to see what can be done to end this strike and how to save the children's year, because this strike might go right down into the end of next month.
Dr. Rose, you have to think this thing out, you know. Then when we set that precedent and another set of people come and another set of people come, what do we do?
When you
always have to be mindful.
When a time comes
my good friend, you always have to be mindful of setting precedents. And I'm saying to you this, what I can say to you is if the time whenever the time reaches, that our assessment and the chief labor officer assessment is that the ministry and the chief labor officer should intervene, that will happen. But I'm making this point tonight. That time we have not reached there. And it is for the union who called a strike that is more political than anything to advise their members to go back to the classroom and to go teach the people's children. The plea you're making, as genuine as it is with the wrong party and partner. It has to be a plea. That plea you have to make with the teachers union who have advised their members to walk out on the children. We did not do that. Not the government. The government didn't do that. We still have the schools functioning. We still have monies made available. Every program within the school system and every budgetary allocation, it continues to go to the system. We have not turned it off. We are still engaging teachers who are in their classrooms, giving grants to them so that they can manage their classrooms by buying items that they need. So we have not abandoned the children, Dr. Rose. And it's not fair to put that on us.
No, I never said you all have abandoned the children.
No. I'm trying to make a point that the people who abandon the children, they're the ones who must be held responsible and they're culpable, not us. The government continue to facilitate everything that we must do in the education system. We have not shut off or shut down nothing. So we are living up to our responsibility. The union must live up to their responsibility and their members must live up to their responsibility as educators.
Okay, well, let me make it clear. I never said the government abandoned the children, but the thing is this. I'm going to make one last appeal to you. On behalf of the children, can the government take the initial steps, go higher? As Michelle Obama says, when they go low, you go high. Can the government go higher, show the union that you're bigger than them, go higher and try to bring this strike to an end? Because I'm saying to you, are the children are the ones who are going to punish. The government, I understand, did not call a strike. I understood everything that you're saying, but can the government just take that initial step and show the people that they're willing to go that extra mile to make sure that the children are not suffering or punished in this whole thing?
Yes, Dr. Rose, again, I'm going back to the same place I went just now. When you run government, you always have to be careful of setting precedents, right? And so the Minister of Labor, he has to be careful that he don't set precedents that will come back to haunt him. I have done as minister what, based on what the law said I must do, I have done that. I have gone out there for warn teachers about consequences walking off of their posts. And tonight I'm doing the same thing. It is for the people who broke it to fix it. I'm saying to you, everything that we must do, we continue to do as a government. The people who call the strike, they must call off the strike. That's simple put. They are responsible for the strike. They call it, they must call it off.
You speak about precedent, and I understand that, but there are good ones and there are bad ones. A good one, you can always follow that one. A bad one, you don't have to follow it. But look, I've exhausted my time on this. I think we're not going to get anywhere on that. So let me move on. Let me ask you another question. Now, as a Minister of Labor, a lot of people are complaining that the minimum wage are not being enforced. And people are working long hours in certain industries. I'm not going to call names because I don't want to single out any nationality. Rather than working 8 hours a day, they're working 12 hours and 15 hours a day and all sort of stuff. It isn't your department, your ministry to enforce the labor laws and make sure people work 8 hours per day as scheduled. Anytime after 8 hours, supposed to be time paid overtime.
Just to say to you, Dr. Rose, I have had personal intervention in some of these matters. And it has changed for the better. Just to say to you, Dr. Rose, that in 3 years, we have recouped $169 million for workers from employers. Just last year, 160 million rather, last year, $69 million. So the fact is that the labor officers are working and they're doing their work. We continue to do training, we continue to do inspections, and we have resolved several issues about people's contract. We have resolved several issues about the overtime. As I speak to you, we have people in court who have not paid the minimum wage. And so we continue to do what we must do. But I say this to people who are listening to this program. People have an obligation and a responsibility also. And I say to people, go in and have a conversation with Kaichur News or some newspaper will not resolve your problem. If you have a labor relations problem with your employer, come make a formal report. And we will investigate it like we have done hundreds of investigations and we have brought justice to people. But people cannot chant externally the Ministry of Labor and expect us to deal with matters. Because I say this to you so that people understand. When we take a man to court or a company to court, it has to be based on evidence. We cannot go before the magistrate, the labor officer, and our lawyers can't go to before a magistrate and say, he said this, she said them said. We have to have evidence about the breach via a formal report. And that is what we can prosecute. And it puts us in a position where we can bring people to testify. But we can't approach the court with he said, she said, them said. People gotta come. I have had to deal with matters, Dr. Rose, where people come, they were terminated. Intelligent people. Some people who are university graduates with master's degree. And the first question I asked them, can I see your contract? And they said they don't have it. It was never given to them. They work 2, 3, 4 years with a company and they don't have a contract. That's a responsibility. So how do I prosecute their matter? I have to intervene in the Ministry of Labor, Department of Labor, can only intervene based on evidence before us what a contract says. So the question is, how intelligent people go take a job, work for years, and they don't have, and sign a contract yearly, and they don't have it in their hands that they can prosecute their case. So those are issues we have to grapple with daily. People go in the gold bush and they come to us and they say, a man owe me $1.2 million. You ask them the question, where's the contractual obligation of the man? People work with people. They come to us and they expect us to resolve issues. But when you dig into the matter, they're a subcontractor. They're not working as an employee with a person. So all of those issues are out there. And we have rectified and we have dealt with many, hundreds of them. And we have been successful. And the proof is in the pudding. We have been able to recoup $160 million for employees over the last 3 years. In 2023, we have recouped $69 million. It must count for something that we are doing work.
That's great. But Minister Hamilton, I can say this to you. I'm from the quarantine, and I've known for a fact, and I can give you the names after. I'm not going to give you the names on live television. That supermarkets and some stores are working workers 14, 15 hours a day. They got to get here at 7 o'clock in the morning, and at 8 o'clock at night, they got to start ship the things back inside. And they already get a lunch break. But these people are not going to come and complain. They just need a job, and they will continue to take the abuse from these workers. But I can give you this, I can tell you the supermarkets, I can tell you some of these workers. They're taking advantage and paying these workers $15,000 and $20,000 a week for working 12, 15 hours a day. I have been on the quarantine, I've seen it for myself. And I have relatives who have been working there as well. But they need a job. A lot of single mothers need a job, they have children, and that's what's happening. So I'm going to give you this information.
No, that information, once it is made available to me, we can investigate. And I've investigated a lot of matters where people have contacted me and made reports. But the point I'm making is that it's not an easy task. We have to, and you know, to do this work, you have to train people. As I've said, when I got there, they didn't exist. So we have to build structure, we have to train, and we have to at the same time give service.
I agree. Now, the consensus is that cost of living is high, and the salary increases do not compensate for the high cost of living. How do you respond to that?
That is if you're looking at the matter short-sightedly. Workers' welfare is not just salary increases. Workers' welfare straddle so many different things. Social services, intervention, whether education or health. So the same people who might say that their salary is not substantial at the moment, that same person is on a scholarship paid for by the government. So if you do look at it short-sightedly, that benefit, when you're talking about benefit to workers, it only equates to salary increases. People are missing the boat, and a lot of people are missing the boat. The person who are on a gold scholarship doing a first degree or a master's, you know, you have affiliation with universities. You know the cost of those things. Those things the government are doing free. So benefits, Dr. Rose and viewers, listeners, are more than salary increases. We have several interventions we have done via grants for children. Many of them are children of public sector workers and others. We have intervened at the level of the power company so that even with the escalation of oil prices, the kilowatt hour we pay is stable because the government, we have been subsidizing the kilowatt hours for every person by giving a subsidy to GPL. We have taken off VAT off us several items in all areas. We have removed all duties and everything from oil, from gasoline and diesel, so that will cushion the effects of people. So as regards the cost of living, several things we have done and we are doing and will continue to do. You know, this matter is not so easy. Some of the issues that we are faced with is things that are imported from external of Guyana that you have no control over. During COVID, a 40-foot container that you could have transported from China to Guyana went to for 4,000 US, went to 20,000 US. We have taken some steps in that area to help. So holistically, Dr. Rose, if people want to be fair, the government has put in place several interventions. So salary increases, it is only one of those interventions. And when we're talking about what the government is doing, we can't be short-sighted. We have to look at the big picture. Many interventions now at public hospitals. People have had to go to private hospital and pay for those interventions. Today, those interventions, they have them at private facilities. And I dare say, I have had people commented that they were shocked about the service given to them at GPHC, how it was exceptional and beyond many private hospitals. So all of these things are work in progress. Now, a lot of costs people have to lay out at private hospitals today. And those costs are they can deal with those matters at the government, at the public hospitals. So holistically, when you look at it, parents, they don't have to buy textbooks anymore for their children. And exercise books, that is given to the children by the government. All of those are costs. So people must look at benefits holistically. And it's not just salary increases. That is the only intervention.
But let me just interrupt you with free textbooks and free exercise books and so forth. That was done during the Barnum's time, and UG was free at the time. So it's not something new now we're seeing here. It was put back that we had to pay. So if the government is doing that now,
Dr. Rose, I'm old enough to know. Intervention, talking it, is not doing it. So when you say that, that was the intent. But I can say to you, that didn't happen. As regards all students have a textbook in their hands. I know the day when one bench had to look at the same textbook. Today, that is not so.
But UG was free. You agree to
There's
that?
a difference. We have committed to. The president has committed to taking it back there.
I know.
But once we do with that, we have a program. We have not sat on our hands. We have a gold scholarship program that has allowed for several people to upgrade themselves. Teachers now, and they have allowances given to them for upgrading themselves via the gold scholarship. So we have committed to taking it back there. But our intervention as regards textbooks, and so it's not sporadic. I live as long as you. So in those days, when we talk about free education, we talked about free education where in some schools you didn't even have desks and benches, my good friend. If you remember those days.
No, I don't know.
So there's a different time.
Okay. Now, I think the first election of Prime Minister Rowley was running for Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. The opposition leader, Ms. Kamala Bissau, said that because of the cost of living at the time, she'll give each household $5,000 to offset the cost of living.
Mm.
Rowley put a question to the media and to the population. Would you accept $5,000 to offset cost of living and bankrupt the country? Or would you prefer the country not being bankrupt? I know what was the answer. 83% of the people said they will accept the $5,000.
Yeah.
They don't care about the bank. So what I'm saying to you, people are concerned with bread and butter issues.
Mm.
How are they going to pay that bill? How are they going to feed their children? This was tested in Trinidad with Rowley, and he had to make some changes himself. But that said, my next question to you is this. I just received this text. The Ministry of Labor, and I think you mentioned it already, the GTU, the Guyana Teachers Union, said that they've made overtures to the Ministry of Labor before the strike to intervene, to have a chief intervene to help us settle the conflict or the disputes. And the ministry has refused. You mentioned it before because you were negotiating with the Ministry of Education. But they said no, they have broken off talks with the Ministry because the Ministry of Education refused to listen to what they were saying. So they said your ministry refused to have the chief labor officer intervene. What have you to say?
Oh, how the ministry refused, and Dr. Rose, when the letter indicating a strike, they had meetings after. So they have to decide. They're engaged. How are we mediating when the two parties are still engaged? So, and we outlined that to them. And then they moved, as I said, from asking us to intervene, the chief labor officer, with conciliation. They moved to arbitration. They didn't even, the one they asked for, they didn't even allow that to perhaps happen. They went to the final stage. And they know arbitration, the chief labor officer cannot impose arbitration on the parties. The parties, they have to agree that nothing is working, and we are agreeing that we move to arbitration. That is how this thing works. So they made what they call overtures. We responded. The chief labor officer responded advising the union. What they can say is that we responded to their position advising them. So they were informed from the Ministry of Labor. We did not neglect to do our duty. And that is the position. The letters are available. We have made them available to the public about what we said to the GTU and what the ministry said to the GTU after we informed the ministry that the GTU wrote us indicating that they are going to move to strike action. The PS Education wrote them to say that she was alarmed and shocked because they were still having conversations and discussing the matters that were still outstanding.
As I agree with you that your Ministry of Labor, and by extension the government, have made a lot of changes to the labor laws in the country. When I say labor laws, have improved labor relations in the country during the past 3.5 years or so. I agree with that because I followed all the ministries one way or the other in Guyana. But my question to you is this. Do you think Guyana labor laws today, even all the changes and improvements you have made, are in sync in the 21st century, or I think there's much more room for improvement?
there is a lot of room for improvement. And I can say to you, the Ministry of Labor and the Attorney General Chambers are in conversation about the matter. We have to amend laws. We have to repeal laws. We have to consolidate labor laws. And we have had conversations with the ILO about helping us in some regards. We have to deal with, like our OSH laws presently. It never contemplated oil and gas sector. So that we have to deal with. We have had conversation with the ILO to give us some help in that regard. So yes, all the laws that govern the labor sector need upgrading and updating. And so we recognize that, and we are working towards that, and we have engaged the Attorney General's chambers. For that matter, as I speak to you, we have an outstanding meeting to engage very shortly to deal with many of the issues regarding modernizing the labor sector. So yes, we recognize that, and we are working towards improving and modernizing all the legislation that has to do with the labor sector.
If I'm to ask you, do you think the minimum wage is adequate in Guyana at the moment, given the cost of living?
Well, a couple of things. One, we have the national minimum wage, and some people call it the private sector minimum wage. Private sector don't have a minimum wage. We have a national minimum wage.
Right.
But at the same time, I can say to you, no government ministry or agency is paying people at that national minimum wage. All government ministries and agencies pay far in excess of what the national minimum wage is. Now, the difficulty is within the private sector, and we have had to take people to court who have not been paying the minimum wage to their workers. We have people in court for that matter as I speak to you. The conversation at the time, Dr. Rose, was, I came and met, is minimum wage that was stranded, even though there was an agreement in the tripartite committee for it to be raised to $60,000 per month. I concluded that. It was there hanging right through the Granger term. I concluded that. When we were about to conclude that, there were people who said, that is most so people in the tripartite from the labor side, why not let us increase the minimum wage beyond $60,000? I took the position that that is another conversation. Let us conclude what was agreed to. Now, as regards where we take it from where it is at, that is a conversation that we will have to have at the level of the tripartite committee.
Honorable Minister Hamilton, there are times when ministers, government officials, not only in your government, other governments as well, will quote the United States on issues that are not working and say, look at the United States, look what they have there, it's not working and so forth, we're doing better than them. Fine, nothing wrong with that. But in the United States, there's a national minimum wage set by the federal government, and the states do set minimum wages as well. In most cases, the state minimum wages, most of the states are higher than the national minimum wage set by the government. The same is true in Canada, where the provinces set their minimum wages. And when the minimum wages are set, all companies, all sectors, private and public, have to comply with those minimum wage. In Guyana, this is not the case. The government sets minimum wage only for government. The private sector can pay whatever they want.
No, Dr. Rose, that is not so. That is not so. We have a national minimum wage. What it means.
That the private sector is supposed to pay as well?
Yes, that's the point. It's a national minimum wage, means that whether public sector or private sector, you cannot pay people below that sum per hour, per day, per week, per month. I went on to say to you that as much as the national minimum wage set by the Ministry of Labor, the government, is $60,000, the government is paying far in excess of that to government employees. That's the point. So the issue you have about the minimum wage is primarily in the private sector. And that is what we are dealing with. As I've said, we have taken many persons to court to deal with that matter. But the government is paying far in excess of what the national minimum wage is. So it's not a government minimum wage. We have set a national minimum wage that all public and private sector must pay to employees.
That's good. But you said it's $60,000?
Yes.
You think that's adequate in today's?
No, I'm not saying it's adequate. I make the point to you that when I became minister, that was stranded. I concluded it. When I was attempting to conclude it, and the government was attempting to conclude it, labor leaders were saying, let us stop and redo the thing to take it to a higher level. My position was, let us move ahead, conclude this, and then in the future we can argue the other case. Because as I speak to you, it might have been bogged down in conversation without getting to where it's at, like it was bogged down for years under the previous government.
What would you like to see the minimum wage be?
What would I like? Oh my God, I don't think that's a fair question. I don't think that's a fair question to me.
Okay.
What I know, I can say this as a government, we are working towards ensuring every Guyanese are able to take care of themselves and their development. And to box me into minimum wage, as I've said earlier, is not paying attention to the bigger picture of other benefits. So it's not wages and salaries and wage increases are not the only barometer of what government is doing for people. That's what the conversation I'm having with you, that to say that if we just say, okay, the salary should be this, and some countries, you would know, Dr. Rose, they have very high salaries, but you have to pay for all your medical intervention. Am I not right?
That's true.
Right. So people got to decide what they want. I'm following countries that are developed where they now tell you have to come back 3 months after if you want this specialist treatment or that one, and you're in a waiting list of 6 months to do a surgery. And so these are developed countries.
Well, let me just let the public notice. In Europe, you have free Medicare system, just like in Guyana.
Mm.
That's there. But in the United States, in Canada, it's the same thing too. Free Medicare system. In the United States, it's not. But if you're working for a company or companies are working for the government, then you don't have to pay. The companies will actually insure you in that. But if you're not, then you have to pay.
Yeah.
So
but the point I'm making is that in developed countries, people might argue, okay, about the salaries are where it's at. But the point is, you know, that a lot of people, they have to pay for medical services. And you know, they have had families who have gone bankrupt and who have gone homeless trying to deal with medical bills.
That's in the United States, though.
Yes. I'm the mighty great.
Why you say it's mighty? Anyway, coming back to the union, the teachers' strike. I have another question here from you from one of the audience, and this may be coming from a teacher, I don't know. The government said, and the government has stopped deduct union dues from the paychecks to pay the union. Why the government stopped doing this?
Okay,
I know a court had made a ruling on this years ago that
right. At least the government is relying on the precedent.
Right.
Where the court says that it's not fair for the government to be the accountant of union.
I agree, but the government was doing it up to the strike.
Yeah.
So it's being seen by the teachers that this is being vindictive, don't you think?
Okay, that is, well, the point is, look, you know, life is, my good friend, Dr. Rose, every action has a reaction. And all we're saying, the General Secretary of the Union says that they can look after their own business. We're saying, okay, look after your own business. That's one issue. So they said there's no problem. They will deal with it via MMG and all the other issues. But if we extend and expand that conversation, and for the same person who sent you the note, how do they assess their union and its leadership? Who failed to honor their obligation? Firstly, to do an audit yearly. They have not done one since 1989. And then as regards their financial statement, which revolves around their license or their registration, it says that they must submit financial statements to the registrar of trade unions. The last one they did is 2004. So we must look at this from all sides. Is that accountability? Is that transparency? Teachers are supposed to train our children to obey rules, laws. The issue of morality and the issue of accountability and transparency, all of those things. But here you have the teachers union. In one instance, they have not submitted the documents that they must submit yearly to the registrar of unions for 20 years. And in another instance, they have not had themselves audited by the Auditor General in 1989. So we're not vindictive. We are depending on a precedent. If you argue, it might say, okay, it should have been done earlier. That might be a fair argument, but everything we do is within the law. A court ruled that it is unfair for the government to be your accountant. You must make your own arrangements to collect your dues from your members. That's not our responsibility. We were granting that as a favor. They said, no problem, no big deal, they could deal with it. So that should not be a complaint anymore.
Mr. Hamilton, maybe I'm completely different. I understand that the government should not be the accountant to deduct any fees, any dues from paychecks, because I know the court ruled against this way back a few years ago. Mm-hmm. But the government was doing it until the strike. My point is, as a government, mm-hmm. and I want you to hear me loud and clear, and all of you hear me loud and clear. We don't have to pick at these things. Government should not pick at these small issues. Continue to do what you're doing and show the union that you're bigger than them. Why can't somebody take the higher road? This is my point. Why pick a fight with somebody who, if the person is in the ghetto, leave them there. You show them that you're above that. The government was doing this, even though the court ruled that they're not supposed to be doing it, but the government continues to do it, and they're doing it for other unions. So now you stop doing it for the teachers union because of the strike. How you think the people will feel? That's my point to you. Governments should not be involved in this type of pettiness. That's my point. Not only your government, governments worldwide cannot be involved in this pettiness. this is
My
way
good friend, Dr. Rose.
going wrong.
My good friend, Dr. Rose. You have the liberty of saying that. You're not in government, you're not running a government. So when a teachers union, who's supposed to be representing teachers, become political, and everything they set out to do is to create confusion in the state, and by extension with their articulation, to bring down your government. What do? Sit on your hands. That's what you're saying. You're focusing and looking at it as a teacher's strike. Innocent.
I don't know if the teachers union can bring down the government. I'm not going to.
I am saying no. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying to you, when you start off with a teacher's strike and then you go into the political terrain and you prosecute this as with rotten politics, what do you expect the government to sit down on their hands and pat people's head? That's how government function. That's all I'm saying.
Gau went on strike many times. Was it political?
No, man. I don't know. Guy Suko is deducting money for Gau. I don't know that.
I know, but I said Gau went on strike many times against Guy Suko. I'm asking you, was the strike political when Gau goes on strike? Gau goes on strike for the smallest things you can think of.
Gau did not articulate bringing down the government. Gau did not articulate.
So Minister Anderson is saying, you're saying the teachers union is articulating bringing down the government?
I am saying to you, I'm not saying they can bring down the government. I am saying to you that the posture. Right. I am saying to you, my good friend, maybe because you're not in Guyana, you're not firsthand seeing this matter. I am saying to you, the posture the last week suggests that it was more politics than union work. That's the point I'm making to you. So what you want the government to do? Sit on their hands?
The last time I checked, this government was democratically elected. I think it is solid based on
yes.
I don't think GTU can even think. And if they're thinking this, then they got to be truly naive to say that.
Well, maybe they have a lot of naive people in the system. We are trying to bring some saneness to them and sanity. All I'm saying to you that the same energy and enthusiasm and Dr. Rose is bringing to this conversation, I'm saying to you, my good friend, you must direct that to the people who call the strike.
Oh, I can do that. That's not a problem for me at all.
No, that's the point I'm making. That might help the situation.
Well, I don't know if that will help the situation because.
But I'm making this point.
Just like you tell me that you have rules and laws and you don't want to set a precedent. They will tell me the same thing. So I don't know if I can help.
Maybe you might be able to persuade them.
I'm only appealing on behalf of the children. That's my bit.
Dr. Rose, the people must have empathy more than any one of us for the children or teachers, who walk off and left the children alone.
No, I think the entire country should have empathy for the children.
Yes, I'm hearing you, but I'm making this point that don't attempt to make us be responsible and culpable for a strike that we're not responsible for.
I never did that. I'm just asking you if you can help the situation. I'm not saying you're responsible. I know the GTU caused the strike. I can't say government is responsible for the strike. I will not say that.
Dr. Rose, I have tried to help. I have tried to help.
That's my answer.
I have tried to help as Minister of Labor by giving proper advice. That one, if you call a strike, it will be illegal. Two, if you walk off of your job, teachers, your employer is not obligated to pay you. I have done my part.
No, let me one know if you're on strike, you're not going to get paid. Well, let me make this clear to all our listeners and to all those who are listening. I am not saying the government is responsible for the strike. The government did not call a strike. GTU called a strike. GTU is responsible for the strike. Whatever the reasons they call a strike for, they're responsible. But I'm saying negotiations should take place to end the strike on behalf of the children who are suffering. They're the ones who might fail their exams, will have to spend an extra year in school where they could go on and do other courses or go on to university or something. Because if the strike drags on for another month, I don't think we're going to have much passes at common entrance and CX.
Dr. Rose, I am sure the Ministry of Education is prepared to sit in the same room at the same table with the teachers union. For that matter, from the standpoint of the Ministry of Education, that is what they should have been doing. That is the point. The Ministry of Education position is that. So it is for the, say that?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It is for the teachers union who started the strike to bring it to an end and go back to the negotiating board table with the partner, the Ministry of Education.
And I want you to know this, and everyone in government and all of yours to know this as well. And the same way I'm appealing to you to see if we can bring the strike to an end, I'm also appealing to the GTU if they're listening. Try and do what is important and necessary for the children. Don't lower your egos. Lower it a little for the children's sake. So I'm appealing to the GTU to find a way how we can bring this strike to an end. I know the side you all are far apart, but there got to be something that will try to end the strike for the sake, I repeat that, for the sake of the children. I will not sit here and say, well, the government is responsible. GTU called a strike, but both parties have got to find a way, a median, to try to see how this can come to an end. It can't be GTU alone. It can't be the government alone. Both parties. That's all I'm trying to say. For the sake of the children. I can't repeat that enough. And I'm because I teach and I see if we go on strike, what will happen to those kids?
Dr. Rose, I'm saying to you again, my good friend, the GTU call a strike. It is for them to bring an end to the strike. And I'm saying to you, I'm speaking as a government minister, that the Ministry of Education is prepared like a week ago to continue the engagement that they have been happy. As I've said to you, for that matter, there's an outstanding meeting that was planned for the 21st. But instead of yes.
And is that
and
meeting,
I'm saying to you,
is that meeting going to be held?
Well, I don't know. That is for the union to make a determination. As far as I know, the invitation is still open at the level of the Ministry of Education.
Is your chief labor officer available?
My chief labor officer is always available. Day and night I can get him.
Okay. So,
but he has advised the union also. The ball is in their court for them to act.
You see,
and
that
the partner is ready to reach them and discuss, Dr. Rose. What more you want me to do and say?
No, I understand that. I understand that. If someone can act and bring and get both parties together to see how we can bring this strike to an end, that will be a major fait accompli. You know, for the sake of the children. That's all. You know, we can't talk about the future of children and see them suffering like this because they're the ones suffering. And you can blame the union can blame you. That's okay. But we are, as adults, should try to say, you know what, this is not right. Let's come together. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, Ms. Hamilton, we're coming to the end of the program. And my last question to you is this. What do you think the union should do to bring the strike to an end? And what do you think the government should do to bring the strike to an end? Both.
The point is, Dr. Rose, the government has done what it's supposed to do. I am the government.
Okay.
Before the strike was called, I as minister and the chief labor officer advised the teachers union that if they call a strike whilst they're negotiating, the strike is illegal. They know that. They still went ahead. the PS of Education wrote them to the effect, because after they wrote, we made contact, and they were shocked to know that the GTU is threatening strike action when they were still engaged. I'm saying to you, even after the letter went out about threatening strike, they still had a meeting, they met, but the strike still went ahead, and they had a proposed meeting at that last meeting for the 21st. That is my information. They went ahead and strike.
So
I forewarned and informed the teachers, if you walk out of your classroom, their employer is not obligated to pay you. I have done my job.
But are you saying that the teachers, the union will have to call off the strike before there are any negotiations?
Well, how do you, part and parcel of negotiation, Dr. Rose, is not under duress. That's the first issue in negotiating.
So the meeting for the 21st will not happen because you think it's going to be
I don't know. It's all in the hands of the teachers union. I'm saying to you.
If the strike still continues, the meeting will not happen.
Dr. Rose, again, the first issue in negotiation and discussion is that no party must have the other under duress. We have the teachers union have a strike, and they want the meeting, they want to re-engage, they have to call the strike off. And I'm sure I can speak on behalf of the Ministry of Education, will be ready to go back to the table and sit down and talk to them. The strike was unwarranted. Now the strike is more political than labor relations. It is for them to deal with it. And that's where it's at.
Okay. We coming to the end of the program. I'll give you the chance to make your final comments. You have the floor.
Look, the thing is, I would say this. If you follow what labor relations and what has happened in the last 3 years and a half, the labor sector has been very quiet because of us intervention by the Ministry of Labor and the Chief Labor Officer. Dr. Rose, we have had signed and mediate and conciliate and all that kind of thing. Some 22 and counting CLAs, companies and labor unions who didn't speak to each other in 5 years during the Granger administration.
What CLAs? Explain that.
Collective labor agreements.
Okay.
Employers and employees. And we have had some very progressive ones that speaks beyond salaries and wages, that speaks to training, that speaks to development of staff. So as regards our role, we have been playing our role and doing what we must do. We have been doing training for employers and employees through the length and breadth of this country. We have been doing inspections, hundreds of them we have done over the last. We have recouped monies for labor for employees in 3 years, $160 million. So that we will continue to do at this level of safety and health. This country, as regards that matter was never in the limelight like it is in the last 3 years. Safety and health of workers in the workplaces, and we'll continue to do that. So the Labor Ministry will continue to engage and to do, to execute its functions and to advise people properly, and that's what we're doing, and we will continue to do. We have made a lot of progress. We have reduced, when I became minister, workplace deaths were 32. In 3 years, it has reduced by some 12. Last year was 20, which is 22 much. But we're moving from 32 to 20. If we didn't add the type of intervention, that 32 might be 42 or 52 and increasing yearly. So the Ministry of Labor, as never before, is executing its mandate through the length and breadth of this country and giving service to employees and also service and advice and so to employers. So some of the issues you raise, we would take that into consideration and to deal with some of the matters you raised specifically in Region 6. But I would say to people, you have a duty to come to us and report your grievance. Because, as I have said earlier, if we take the matter to court, we have to be able to rely on evidence. And we can't rely on evidence if we don't have a formal report. So, Dr. Rose, at the level of training and development, we have done lots of work. Not just in a general way, in all the regions across this country. We have been able to bring women into the non-traditional training areas. Of the 11,400 people we trained over the period, Dr. Rose, over 40% are females.
Okay.
So those are things we have done. As regards placement of people, our central recruitment, we have been able to find jobs for hundreds of people over the period. You know?
Okay.
So we will continue to do that. And we will hope, finally, my good friend, that the GTU listening and they heed your call, the call of the strike.
I hope so too. Thanks, Minister Hamilton. Let me say this thing. It is true that Minister Hamilton, since taking office 3.5 years ago, and by extension, the government has done a lot to improve labor relations in Guyana. The evidence is there. No one could tell me that I am a PEP. I'm nothing. But where the evidence leads me, I follow them, and I'm being objective. Minister Hamilton has done a lot. He's not even giving me the praise for it, but I'm going to praise you tonight for the work you have done, because I know and I follow each ministry in Guyana very, very keenly of what progress is being made. Now, having said that, I think you have gone a far way to at least settle a lot of disputes indeed. But the sad part of it, and very unfortunate, is that in this teacher strike is the children who are suffering. And this is why I appeal to you, the minister, and I'm appealing to the GTU as well, to see how best we can reach a median to try to settle this dispute. We don't want the kids to continue to suffer. They're staying home with the parents, they're not learning, or whatever it is. This is something that I think is very unfortunate. As an educator, I'm saying to both parties, one way or the other, it has to end somewhere. I'm not blaming no one part. I'm not blaming the government for calling a strike. The government did not call a strike. Let me make it plain. GTU did. For whatever reasons they call a strike, they probably can defend their reasons, and that's fair to say to them. But I'm saying we have got to just lower egos, try to find some ground where we can settle this dispute on behalf and in the interest of the children. Now, Minister Hamilton, you did an excellent job. I could not have expected better. You are, I don't know, you have covered all the contours of labor in Guyana, labor relations in Guyana, which is excellent as a minister. And you're on top of all the issues, which is great. I can't say anything else of you. You know, you have done a fantastic job. I think you're a superb minister, and I'm happy that you are representing that ministry. So once again,
thank you very much.
I thank you for coming on, and I thank all our listeners and our sponsors, and thanks to Noir Singh for making this program available, and our technical directors, Devin Bissoon and Ryan Gobin. I thank everyone. Mayor Hamilton, again, thank you very much for accepting my invitation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rose, for having me.
You did a splendid job.
Have a good night.
And all your colleagues should know how excellent you are tonight. You did not back down. You did not back down from anything. You explain it as simple as possible. And that's what's needed in the country. Thank you very much.